Hello, welcome to our presentation for Local History Month, May 2022, in your words, Dialect and Heritage Project. If you haven't seen our short presentation yet that we've done already, please give it a watch. It tells you a little more in detail about the University of Leeds Dialect and Heritage Project. So to get started, my name is Claire and I'm based at Ryedale Folk Museum. And this is Poppy.
And I'm based at the Dales Countryside Museum.
And together we've looked at our collections as well as those at the Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture. And we're going to pick out some of our favourite objects and share them with you today. We're then going to look at the different words associated with them. So we're going to pepper it with dialect words. Feel free to comment if you have any words of your own or that pop them on a postcard that you'll find in the local library. Also in the comments section, you'll see there's links about how to get involved and to take part in the current dialect research and complete our survey. Just a little disclaimer, whilst we've chosen to share these stories, any mispronunciation or errors are our own. We're not linguists or historians, but we do have a passion for connecting museums and objects to audiences. So I hope you enjoy seeing some of our secrets from the straw. So let's get started.
Yeah, so Secrets from the Store brings together our two museums, so Ryedale Folk Museum and Dales Countryside Museum, which are both based in North Yorkshire. So we aim to showcase the kind of relationship between the objects, the themes and the people. So as we're weaving these collections into those that are held with Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture, we will within the presentation show you some images from our areas which show life in the 1950s onwards. So words such as those above, on screen, will be present throughout. So how many of these do you know? So let's have a look. So addle, ad, adlings, brass and brant. So these are all words based around money. So addle, add to earn. Adlings are earnings, brass is money, and if you've ever heard of brant, that also means dear and expensive.
So now we're just going to look at blacksmithing. So we're going to start at Ryedale Folk Museum. So here are a few images. So in the past, summers were spent kept busy shoeing horses and hooping wheels of wagons and carts. And then in winter, they laid the pieces on harrow teeth, coulters and socks for ploughs. So all repair work that's now gone. In the book, Life in the Moorlands of North Yorkshire by Marie Hartley and Joan Ingleby, they note that Atkinson's at Smeaton, if you know where that one is, made 4,000 horseshoes a year. And the photograph here that you can just see on screen is of our blacksmiths at the museum. So the Blacksmith Forge was one of the very first buildings constructed at Ryedale Folk Museum over the course of 1 month during the autumn of 1966. Based approximately on a mid-Victorian forge, it remains a popular space with visitors. And the blacksmith we do have a working blacksmith who comes and to events to show you how it works. In April 1968, our forge was supplemented with a hearth, a chimney and bellows from a blacksmith premise on Potter Hill in Pickering, so just down the road, run by a family of a Mr. Taylor for several generations. So the role of the smithy was once indispensable, and there was one to be found in most villages, occupied constantly in shoeing horses, making and repairing the tools and implements. The process involved heating the metal tyre so that it would expand enough to be placed upon a wooden cartwheel or a hooping plate, and cool water would be applied to contract the metal tyre to fit the wheel, which we'll look at that image in a second. So these images here, we can see the blacksmith shoeing a horse and a selection of our horseshoes. There is a full wall of these in the museum. They vary in size and shape. And it was also believed that horse chestnut trees were associated with blacksmiths. So apparently the crushed conkers were good for horses to relieve coughing. We'll have a look at our next slide. So these images here These images here are from the Leeds archive, and this is a blacksmith called Eric Snee from Dundee, and he's making the horseshoe there. So he's using this study and he's braying them. So while he brays it, he beats it with the hammer on the anvil there. So they're beautiful images, just showing you the blacksmith at work. And here we just have the hooping of the wheel. So in addition to the carts, as I say, they repaired them, so you can see the smoke coming up here from them as they've moved it around. And here they are with the finished product.
So tinsmithing as well. We thought this was a really great follow-on from the blacksmithing. So tinsmithing based at the Dales Countryside Museum. Usually tinsmiths were based in towns and the occasional village. They played a valuable role in the community. They also worked in copper as well as tin. They would make backhands for carrying milk. They would make tea cans, pails, pans, loaf tins, heather burners, and cheese kettles. So in addition to producing new items, the tinsmith was also really good at repairing other goods. So the workshop, as you can see on screen, pictured to the right, is now created at the Dales Countryside Museum. It was formerly in the upper story of a barn at Castle Bolton, which also belonged to the Shields family, members of which they've been tinsmiths in Wensleydale for over 130 years. At one time, they also worked from within the castle. So basic tools of a tinsmith consisted of various size shears, a roller in which sheet tin was wound to break or bend, folders to seam the edges, hammers, stakes, and also a jenny to bend the tin to make a pattern. So pictured on the left are two photographs from Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture. These were taken during the Folk and Life Studies survey in the 1960s. So pictured is Mrs. Mary E. Scott, and she's pouring the morning's milk from a backhand through a sile, held in place with a sile bricks, into a copper cheese kettle at her home in Swaledale. So the milk would be used to make cheese, whilst the cream that is siled off will also make butter. So to her right is a gentleman who is also the owner of a large copper cheese kettle, pictured outside of his home in Wensleydale. The cheese kettle, just visible to the left of the gentleman, was made by a tinsmith in West Witton.
So over at Ryedale, it was also recorded that they were sometimes called whitesmith, as the tin is kind of a silvery white metal. So here on the screen, you can see a photograph of our tinsmith, his area at the museum, which you can visit. And there's also two other objects on the screen that are my favourite, really. So we can see here there's an image of a lantern or a lanthorn in a cake tin. And these are really beautiful details in the pattern. So you can really have a good look at these. And we also have the lanterns, which are on display. These are just two. There's a full shelf, so please come and have a look. But amazing work by the tinsmith. You know, they could do this amazing detail when they wanted to. So definitely a great craft.
So even though a lot of these traditions are a way of the past, you can still visit the rope makers and whores, which is opposite the Dales Countryside Museum. But you can see that these ways of making, although they're still very much rooted in the past, are still practiced today in a very similar fashion. So the rope makers and whores is still an operating business, as they employ a team of staff who follow in the footsteps of those who came before them. They make braid, they make cord and twine, as well as rope. Still the same, but using much more modern machinery. So the rope makers was established in 1905, and like W.G. Arthwaite and son, T.G. Arthwaite, who was photographed in the 1960s, just on the right-hand side. So after him, Peter and Ruth Anderson, two college lecturers, bought the rope makers in 1975. They had no experience of running a business or knowledge of the rope making process. But despite all of this, even astonishing news articles about dropout teachers moving to Wensleydale, the change of lifestyle was planned in detail by them, and also made good use of their previous joint experience, especially Peter's specialist knowledge as a textile chemist. So for 4 months, they overlapped with T.G. Arthwaite before he retired. And there's a gentleman, John Blythe, I was reading, whilst he was working in Hawes in 1908, he recalls that there were the following skilled people living and working in Hawes. So there were 6 boot repairers, also working clog makers, 12 joiners, 3 cabinet makers, 4 blacksmiths, 4 plumbers and tinsmiths, 14 tailors, 2 milliners, 4 dressmakers, 1 clockmaker, and obviously a watch repairer too. There was 1 printer and 1 saddler. So already at the time showing a decline. So if we move on to the next slide, so in the middle is the rope maker's bench, which was then T.G. Arthwaite's workshop in Hawes. Oh, sorry, that's not in the middle, that's to the right-hand side. But you can see in the photo rope halters, braided halters, a splicing horn, and a ball of cotton. So the 2 pictures also on the left were taken comparatively in June 1962 and in October 2021. And it details the rope walk. So Mr. T.G. Arthwaite in the middle is unwinding cotton warp along a rope walk. And on the very right-hand side, an employee is following the same process using the same equipment on the right-hand side. So moving on again.
So the images here are from the Ryedale Folk Museum collection. So again, you can see the same principles that you've just done from the Dales countryside. But the first image is taken in the late 1970s, and the second image shows a Geoffrey Lealman from Kirby Moorside using one of his family's rope making machines actually at Ryedale Folk Museum. They're just beautiful images, just showing, kind of how it worked, and them all getting on, concentrating very much, but beautiful images.
And something else that fell out of use in the 20th century was the old shepherd's score. So Jan van Tedera. It is a sheep counting system traditionally used by shepherds in northern England, and some other parts of Britain as well. The words are numbers taken from Brythonic Celtic languages, which had died out in most of northern England by the 6th century. They were most commonly used for sheep counting and also counting stitches and knitting until the Industrial Revolution. So what they would do to count a large number of sheep, a shepherd would repeatedly count 20, placing a mark on the ground, or he'd also move his hand to another mark on his crook. Or they would drop a pebble into his pocket to represent each score. So each score could be 5, 10, or 20. So interestingly, the word yan or yen for one in Cumbria and some Yorkshire dialects generally represent a regular development in Northern English. This way of counting is just one of the ways you can show how dialect can vary across regions. So one variation in Bowland and Wensleydale is Yane, in Rathmel, Ain, A-E-N. Nidderdale and Derbyshire, it is Yane, Swaledale, Weardale, Tong, and Wharfdale. And also in Teesside, Yan. That in Kirby Lonsdale, it would be Yan, slightly like with an extra A, a definition on the A, so Yane. However, in Southwest variations, it could also be Yan with a H for the number 1. So on screen, we're looking at, we're kind of focusing on sheep farmers in Swaledale. They're shearing Swaledale sheep with hand shears on a salving stool. But the words shown on the right-hand side show the shepherd's score, so 1 to 10, which also detail the way sheep would have been counted originally in Swaledale.
So now we're just going to have a share some kind of lovely images with you about finding light and working with daylight hours and how people would have worked around problems. So we're going to start with the lace makers in Ryedale. So they thought they'd found a bit of a solution to working with poor lighting. So not only would they try and work outside, but if the weather and temperature didn't allow that, then they would try and make their lace by candlelight. So here we can see it's like a lace maker stool. It's a often three-legged stool. It could also be called a candle block, candle stool, or pole board, upon which the candle and the water filled magnifying glasses, so you can just see these at the top, are fitted, and it's placed in the middle of the room. So the lace makers would then arrange themselves around the light in an orderly manner that allows each person to have at least some of the light. So the most effective lace makers, they would get to be closest to the light. They would have the highest stools and the position nearest, and they were known as kind of having the first light. Then the graded workers would arrange themselves according to ability to have the second light and the third light. Now, there's also been some discussion about the customs of using snow water. And the reason behind that is because snow water is very pure and it's close to the level of purity associated with distilled water. So therefore it'd be very clear and it'd lack that kind of sediment and less prone to deposit and scale on the inside of the plaques than that of, say, well water, which could do that. And the issue of blue globes had also been experimented with. So by adding a few drops of sulfuric acid, it gave the water a bluish tinge and it softened that light. So what that would do is it would kind of give a more natural light and take away that yellow that you sometimes get kind of a candle flame. So a really interesting way of trying to be able to work in that much detail and find a solution.
Yeah, and the more I kind of looked around the Dales Countryside Museum, I came across this lovely little display on candles and oil lighting, including these rushlight holders. So rushlights are a type of candle formed by soaking the dried pith of the rough plant in animal fat or grease. So they were really inexpensive. They would likely not be a pleasurable experience to sit by whilst crafting, likely because of the smell. A lot of the traditional crafts were done by candlelight, as I was mentioning, but also the lily low, the firelight, by the fireplace for warmth. So in the middle, pictured is a young male in front of the fireplace, and you can see under his feet is a traditional rag rug, which would have also been made by the whole family on an evening to keep feet warm on the stone flag floors. But until about 1910, the larger towns and villages were lit by gas. So places like Richmond, Leyburn and Middleham had their own gasworks. So Hall streets were lit by lamps, and John Blythe recalls Hall streets were lit by electricity from 1911 onwards. And this was mainly owing to the cheese factory owned by Mr. Chapman. The gas company vigorously opposed the idea. However, Mr. Chapman was so keen to win his contract that he fixed his own alternative system of lights and also gave a free service for a time to the rest of Hawes. In the end, he won and was most fortunate, however. But during the war, conditions caused Hawes to go back to the old days of oil lamps and candles, a time of gloom and difficulty all throughout the war years. So until the reign of Elizabeth I in the 16th century, yarn was produced using a distaff. It was only with the use of a spinning wheel that yarn could be produced in large quantities. So hand spinning continued in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. So a spinner would keep 4 to 5 hand knitters in constant work. So houses and farms, particularly in the Cumbria area, featured spinning galleries, where both flax and wool was spun. So fleeces were thrown up and in the adjacent wool room. So as you can see on screen, there's a picture of New Biggin Spinning Gallery. So from about 1780, the Industrial Revolution began, and it had a major impact on the Dales and also the rest of industry across North Yorkshire. So textile mills were built to work cotton, wool and flax. Many farmer corn mills were converted to help increase industrial production. Despite the wool trade and knitting industry seeing success over many centuries in the Dales, as textile industry developed and flourished in the cities in the north, the mills of the Dales were unable to compete and textile production eventually died out.
So now we're just going to go back over to Ryedale Folk. So in the first half of the 18th century, villagers still made their own clothes, and Hutley Hall was an important weaving village, with flax for making linen being grown in the village fields. And there was a national effort to try and encourage the home production of cloth. At that time it was compulsory for bodies to be buried in English cloth as well. So within the Ryedale Folk Museum's collection, we have a very special book. This is one of my favourites. And it's a tie and draft book. And what it does, it contains 35 sets of different weaving patterns. And it was created by a Frank Thomas in Hutley Hall. And it's dated, whether you can just see it on the photograph, the 24th of December, 1828. So you can just see they have all these different patterns that are just down there, a drill, a diaper, all these different ones and how to actually do it. It's just a beautiful booklet.
And on the next slide, there's pictured a wooden leg board, and this was used at yarn mills and Aysgarth in Wensleydale. And this was about stretching out long stockings knitted for the market. So stockings were made of an oily natural wool, were shrunk, then washed and hung up to be dried on the flat wooden leg board before being pressed and bundled for sale. So on the left is some dialect words associated with knitting. So it's kind of pronunciation, so threed instead of thread, twilt instead of quilt, smock snarl. I think this is a great one. So it's when yarn or thread is not kept tightly wound, and if it suddenly twists, it creates a smock snarl, so a big knot. And a cop would be yarn wound on a spindle. A brooch would be a wooden spindle in which a cop of yarn is wound upon a clue. So just jumping down to clue, is a clue of yarn is a ball of wool. And worsted is darning wool, especially recorded in Asquith. Wires and pricks were kind of curved needles, mainly kind of, as you can see with Elizabeth Dinsdale on screen. She's using some kind of curved needles, knit needles. And a clue holder would be to hold the ball of wool. So if you just go on to the next slide, so wool winders and mittens. So muffetees or mittens, a dialect word for mittens across North Yorkshire, showcase on screen are 3 photographs, and these are all from the Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture, but they detail the kinds of knitting equipment that were being used across the county in the 60s. So knitting sticks like sheets, held by Mary Scott to the right hand side. These were used to anchor a knitting needle and would be often tucked in the belt at the side of the body, or kind of, sometimes they had belts as well that would wrap around. But a popular design in North Yorkshire was the goose wing. So as you can imagine, it would slide very well into the kind of side of the hip. So some knitting sticks were plain and utilitarian, but others were really beautifully carved and given as gifts. So sometimes from young men to their sweethearts with names inscribed, or also from fathers to their daughters. So really unique in decoration, they form a really distinctive element of folk art. It was recorded in the Survey of English Dialects that sheath was also known, also called, so it was recorded in Asquith and Newcastle, a shear, but also called a crook, likely crochet hook. So a small wooden implement belted to the waist to hold the end of a needle when knitting. And also on the kind of left-hand side, a wool winder, also called a windle. It's a wooden stool with a hole in the middle. The one pictured belonged to Miss Maggie Calvert of Bertestead in Wensleydale, but it's used to assist in winding the wool. So it'd be the ball of the clue of garn would be rewound, so the ball did not jump around on the floor. The thread would come right from the centre of the middle of the ball.
So another object from our collection at Ryedale Folk, this is a wooden knitting sheet, and it's approximately 140 to 150 years old. And this particular object has like a personal story. So it belonged to a local family. So the lady was called Julia Freer, and she was married just in Bilsdale at High Laskill Bridge, which was a Quaker house, in 1731. And this object was it was donated by a great-great-granddaughter of the family. So you can kind of just see that little inscription that kind of came with it, which is just beautiful that we've got one of these with the story as well. But as Poppy said, knitting is such a big, such a big part of our history in the Dales and up on the moors. So just beautiful to have it within our collections. Right, we're going to go on to food for thought. We're going to have a look at those kind of industries associated with food now. So we've got some more words, haven't we, Poppy?
Yeah, I love some of these. So clag or claggy is kind of sticky. Chiggle, to kind of chew or cut really badly. Kissen's a really positive word for like burnt food. So imagine like a collop. So a collop of bacon, a bacon rasher, burnt to perfection. Clemmed is when you're kind of really gagging for a drink, you've got a really dry throat. And fendy means that you're kind of a good cook.
I like that one, I might use that one.
Yeah, really industrious. And gollop, you must have said this maybe. So this is to kind of eat really quickly. And tatty hash, I don't know if you've ever heard this, just tatty, short for potato hash. Caisty is really popular in kind of Cumbria areas as well. And it's usually said about fussy or picky kids.
I've never come across that one. It's not what I've come across.
There's a restaurant in Ambleside actually that's named themselves Caisty as a kind of nod to their heritage. Nosh, good food. Scrummy, like delicious, really yummy, and sarnie for a sandwich. Dialect word for sandwich.
So we're going to have a bit of fun because everybody likes a good cup of tea. So a few bits. So let's have a look. The map on the left-hand side is from the project, so from the Dialect and Heritage Project, and it was asked, when you pour the boiling water onto the leaves in the teapot, what do you see you do? And so these are some of the responses. So do you soak it? Do you mash it? Do you mask it? Do you draw it? Do you mass it? Do you scald it? Do you soak? And I'd love to know what you do with your cup of tea. So please let us know in the comments. And we're also, kind of, and the other picture is from within one of the museum buildings. And you talk about the crane and reckon. Did you ever have one of these? Did you see them? But it's this appliance that you can see the kettle there. But there's lots of lovely words, even when you think about making a tea and what's left in the bottom of the teapot, is it your dregs? Do you have a special name for that? Is it the chaff? What do you call it? I know when I've done events, people have offered me lots and lots of different words for this one, even to what you call your kettle. So yeah, add yours to the comments. But it just shows us really the difference of what people use, doesn't it? And even within ourselves, when we chat, we do use different words for different things. Now, this photograph here, I just wanted to share with you because I love it. You can see the kettle just at the front. So this is the Hayes family picnic. So it was taken on the 7th of August, 1911, we believe, and it's in Huttonley Hole. And you can see the Hayes family there can be enjoying a picnic on the North Yorkshire moors, and they're kitted out not only with a picnic basket, but with a makeshift fire and kettle ready for cups of tea. I don't think I've ever taken taking a kettle with me on a picnic, but I do think it's just a wonderful photograph. Okay, it's splash of the good stuff. So we've done the tea, let's do the milk. Again, some beautiful, beautiful images here as well. So one daughter of the family usually specialised in making butter, which requires a quantity of cream. And both separated around, and cream was drawn off from the milk, left standing to set in large lead-lined vats kept on the dairy shelves, and backhands were carried by leather rickshaws or webbing straps over both shoulders, so you might just be able to see in the corner. Donkeys and ponies as well, also used as pack animals across the dales. A milk crate or a hebble with a string over the animal's pack on a sack.
Animals back.
Yeah, animals back.
Animals back on a sack.
Back on a sack. And the cans are placed either side. So you can just see here that they're placed either side. So these words, the corner. Do we know any of those? So beestings or beestlings, that's the milk of the cow immediately after calving. And then we've just said about hebble as well, which reminds me was
a milk crate or a hebble. Like what you kind of see on the donkey.
Yeah. So just great images again. The images are just beautiful. So Mary Scott is pictured on the screen. She's the one here that's churning the butter. She's weighing the butter using the weigh bogies and then rolled out by hand. So wooden butter pats, so also known as Scotch hands, were used to shape the butter into rectangles, and then butter prints were used as a decorative element. The picture of some of the butter prints that could be viewed at the Dales Countryside Museum, but also Ryedale Folk Museum also has a selection of these on show. Such beautiful designs, aren't they? And all very different, which is lovely. And at Ryedale Folk Museum, we also have a selection of objects which can be found in the dairy, including this butter worker. So after churning the sloppy butter, it's put into the butter worker, and you turned the handle, and it's separated out the water to leave the butter. And again, you can see that on site.
And showing you a little bit of archive material again. So pictured are two cheese presses. We have cheese presses at both of our museums, but this one is recorded in situ. So the stone cheese press is an askerig, and they also made a sketch when they went round and recorded kind of people's ways of life and the ways that they said things. So in the response books. So these can be seen at Leeds Special Collections, all of these response books. So as I said, this one is from askerig. But also, if you look in the kind of background, you can see some of the kind of wooden cheese presses. So there's different variations. So this is Mary E. Scott's, who you've already met previously. So the two wooden ones are in the back garden at a home in Swaledale. But a chessput or a vat full of curd will be put into the cheese press. So the cheese press is a specialised level press made from metal or wood, and it would be used to press the curd for around 2 days. So at Ryedale Folk Museum, did you say that they had a cheese press?
Yeah, we do. We have a cheese press. You can come and see it. It's in one of our buildings. So it's huge.
Yeah.
With the cheese kettles as well. So again, if you're up this way, please come and have a look. But just beautiful, aren't they?
Yeah, really gorgeous objects. But yeah, no, thank you so much for listening, and we really hope that you enjoyed just our tiny little snapshot from behind the scenes, the secrets within our museums. So please do come and visit us. Many of the objects we spoke about today are on display, and there's stories of those like who owned them to be heard and learned as well. So the talk that we've given is part of the Local History Month May, and also in your local libraries in North Yorkshire are helping to promote the project that we're working on. So in your words, So please pop into your library and pick up a survey. And if you visit the website, which is also detailed on screen, so www.dialectandheritage.org.uk, and you can also complete a survey online. So have your say, contribute your words to the research to find out how dialect is changing. We want to know, kind of, as we said before, what dialect words you use, what words you use. Do you like mash or brew your tea? Do you play tars, or do you play on merrills? We're keen to find out, so just contribute your kind of story in the comments as well. But once again, thank you so much for watching. If you could please feedback about this event as well, just by following the QR code. So just a reminder how you use those. So if you get your camera up on your smartphone, if you just open up your camera and hover it over that QR code, a little link should come up on screen and you can follow that. Otherwise, what you can do is just type in to your kind of top of your browser and the kind of link at the bottom. So HTTPS and the little apostrophe and what are those called again? The forward.
Forward slash?
Yeah, that's it. bit.ly/D&H audience survey. So that just helps us continue this amazing work. We are Heritage Lottery funded. So by giving us feedback, it helps ensure that we can continue this amazing work into the future. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks again for listening to us, and so keep looking at Local History Month May, and hopefully if we're doing an event near you, please come and see us and check out the website. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.